topic for us today.
Yeah, actually, it helped because our previous topic, I feel like kind of does build into our next topic, because even though, again, I don't necessarily think of when I think of superheroes, the X-Men necessarily aren't the first one that I think of. Again, this is the latest installment, again, be it, how the marketing is on this, even though by nature this show is more of a sci-fi show, it is still, unfortunately, has been branded by the marketing, a superhero show. So the next question and topic that I have is, what does this add to the superhero genre? And by default, also, does the vision of this show translate in its debut overall? I think with that second point, I absolutely think it does, because already this show to me is 1,009 more visually interesting than the last, 5 kind of, Marvel superhero properties that we've seen overall, not discounting everything. Again, it's weird because this is kind of coming off of, again, Zack Snyder's Justice League and The Boys Season 2 and Watchmen and a whole bunch of other really distinct, really visually interesting, kind of really, what's the word I'm looking for? Really, I feel like auteur-driven kind of like superhero things that actually do have things to say and aren't just the typical Marvel surface level thing. So as far as what this adds overall to the superhero genre, that I think it still might be too soon to say overall, just because of so far, just based off what we've gotten in this pilot episode, we really only have kind of allusions to other superhero properties. But again, I think that's where kind of the majesty of the show comes in, because again, even though there are allusions to other superhero properties, this is still an original superhero property. So this has a chance to actually go in new and unique superhero storytelling directions that others may have been kind of withheld from doing because of their dictation on the source material, Because that's so fascinating, right? As far as adaptations go, in the sense of where there was a time when an adaptation was supposed to be something kind of distinctly different from the thing that we got. The fact of what makes Jaws the movie so interesting is the fact that it is so distinctly different from Jaws the book overall. But now, and I feel like Harry Potter had a lot to do with this, we're in the sense of where if something is not devoutly like an almost shot-for-shot recreation of the original thing that it's based on, it's almost like people just won't accept it for what it is, So I think that's kind of like an interesting stance. I mean, you're a guy who's read a lot of comics, a lot more comics than I have, so you could probably speak better to that than I can, Especially since Marvel's kind of taken that stance and kind of almost put their own stance on it. But what do you think about that?
No, I think I pretty much agree with everything you just said. I think it was very well said, too. The auteur angle is a very interesting one to bring into the discussion. I really agree with that. Yeah, so I guess I'll sort of tackle it in the sense that what do I think it adds to the superhero genre? Sitting here fresh after watching the debut episode, I think the biggest thing it adds is hope for someone like me who's very, no pun intended, disenfranchised with superhero movies as a whole. I'm sick of the inundation. I think there is a huge superhero sickness that's going around right now where if it's not superheroes and if it's not a major franchise that's been pre-established like Fast and Furious or James Bond or Mission Impossible, it doesn't have legs to stand on, which is very unfortunate. Where's the room for new titles to grow and come about? And so I think this gives me hope, because it could be a way to sort of not only introduce something new to the superhero genre, but challenge the pre-existing fields if this show does see success. The pre-existing titles in the field to up their game, to truly give us something different. You say we're going to get something different in Phase 4 Marvel. Clearly, it's too early to tell to speak on that. But hey, if this show's successful, you may have to go back to the drawing board, because I hope that this show, if anything, shows that people are waking up to the formula, are getting tired of the formula. And if we're going to keep getting inundated with superhero content, I at least hope that it begs the question of how can we do something that hasn't been done before, because that's what I want. There's thousands of comics, thousands of source material, and it just seems like they're not using any of it, because the comics I read are so much more interesting than the movies and TV shows that I watch for the most part. Clearly, there's exceptions. The Boys, that Watchmen series of 2019, but that's a needle in the haystack. That's every once in a while. Right. That's like the two that came to the top of my head. I should be able to name with how many superhero properties we have. At least 5 more, but I can't right now. I cannot do that in the heat of the moment. So does the vision of this show translate, right? That was your second point?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if it did. It felt a bit messy. It felt a bit cloudy. It's trying to do a lot, and it's going to take more than a pilot episode. This kind of goes to our argument of binge or watch it week to week, where I think maybe if we had all the pieces and I was able to sit down and binge all 6 or 12 episodes, whatever it is, I probably wouldn't even bring this point up. But because of the way they chose to release it, I feel confused right now, but I also feel intrigued. Right. So I'm going to let you take that and bounce off all that. But that's just kind of like my initial response to the questions we posed.
Well, it's fascinating because we've talked a lot about kind of how the idea of auteurism is just going away with the mass corporatization of everything, right? And it's kind of, in a weird way, we've kind of found ourselves in the same situation that we were in, like we saw in one of our favorite movies from last year, Mank, with the 30s and 40s, where everything is so kind of driven by the studios that there really isn't a chance for kind of this singular auteuristic vision to shine through, right? And it's why we praise something like Zack Snyder's Justice League, because even maybe though that movie wasn't nearly a perfect movie, it was just such a thing that we just never get anymore, that we're willing to kind of give it, we're kind of willing to kind of cast aside some of our problems that we may have had with it, as far, in order to kind of reward the things that we rarely get anymore. And this, in a weird way, I kind of think also falls into that trick, because again, even as problematic of a creator and an auteur as Joss is, Joss still is one of those guys that has a singular, unique vision, and that is something that, again, it's so tricky because we'll get into this more with kind of the differentiation between the art and the artist, but it's something that we get so rarely nowadays. So rarely do we get something now that is truly the vision of just one person. And again, we praise all these directors that Marvel hires, when really, how many of them actually have a chance to make their vision shine through overall? The answer is barely any of them. I can think of maybe 3 overall. It's James Gunn, Taika Waititi, and there. See, I can't even name a third one overall, as far as the different as far as different people whose kind of singular, unique visions can shine through overall. And it's both disheartening, but at the same time, it's also tricky, because again, people seem to like the stuff that they get, and they like the studio dribble because they just want to be entertained overall, and as much as we like, we constantly, we say that we hope that people are waking up overall, the sad truth is that, again, we are constantly the minority overall, and the majority of people do not care. They just want to get the thing that they are being entertained by, and right now it is just the latest superhero thing. So I guess the question that kind of defines whether the show is going to have legs overall is, will this show get the viewers that it can get? Because as far as factoring in also what you were talking about with kind of the week-to-week thing, right? That's the HBO of it all, right? HBO has kind of made their mark in kind of the singular, unique space. Like, they kind of were always a step above television, which is why they were kind of able to, I feel like, again, the botch release of HBO Max aside, kind of able to blend into the kind of the new age of streaming so seamlessly, and why kind of Game of Thrones kind of almost lent itself to the kind of the early days of that streaming, as far as, the kind of being the epicenter of monoculture. Whether this show is the show that will be able to reclaim that spot, absolutely not. I don't think it will be, because again, just for sheer fact of Disney and Marvel has kind of moved from film to TV now. But as far as kind of providing good alternative counter programming, which is something that I think that HBO has always done an incredible job of overall, back when they were kind of the epicenter of pop culture, with kind of the Sopranos heyday, when Lost took over and was the talk of the town, on cable TV, when cable TV almost had a chance to reclaim its spot before AMC and Breaking Bad came out, and then Game of Thrones came out, and it was like, yeah, they're basically done with, So like, kind of, what's your take on all that?
Yeah, I think I can answer the monoculture question pretty easily. I've seen some articles try and write that and say, hey, this could be HBO's new. Why does it have to be, though?
Right,
why does
right.
it?
Exactly.
Because that already, in turn, it's like one of my major issues with that I've learned sort of being a critic is with the marketing. My second major issue is with the entertainment journalism that surrounds it. Why are you putting that? It's almost like you're setting it up for failure. Like, they have to know that
exactly
when
they're doing.
They have to know that it's self-sabotaging a completely new IP that has no previously existing source material, that is just debuting, trying to add that pressure of, hey, live up to a Titan, just because you're on the same network, just because you're on the same sort of streaming service, that this monster show that, like we always say, dominated a monoculture. I mean, hey, Talkin' Thrones debuting very soon. Stay tuned in our channel. Absolutely. But like, why does it have to be? That's another issue that I have here. Like, why does it have to be superheroes, right? Superhero sickness. Why does it have to live up to something that it's similar to or in the same ballpark of? That's not art. Like, as much as I enjoy ranking and critiquing film in that regard, sort of pitting a film against another film, there's a lot to learn there. I do think that we've also forgot the other side of it, where it's art and it's subjective. So while someone can rank a list, just because you like that critic or that commentator does not mean you have to live and die by their words. Don't let them brainwash you towards a review. Have that sort of, even though you can't speak to them, sit with that for the rest of the day. If you truly love movies, you want to sit with that person's ranking and be like, I can see why he would say that. Maybe I'll change that on my list. But the movie he put at number 1, that was completely wrong. And I just don't know if those kind of conversations happen. So it's just like, I get it. Maybe this is sort of an attack by the industry to sort of discredit Joss. And you spoke about separating the art from the artist. Like, clearly, I know both of us don't condone, if
Not
it's
at all.
true, what he did behind the scenes. I haven't followed the case at all because honestly, I'm just so sick of this stuff getting into my entertainment. But if it's true, obviously we don't condone it. But like, hey, we're not talking about what he did personally right now. We're
Right.
talking about the show.
Right.
So it's
And
just
as of right now, again, like, they haven't taken his name off the credits. They obviously couldn't, because that would have just screwed up so many things. Obviously he has been replaced as chief showrunner on the show. His name is still attached to the show. So, like, we kind of can't talk about the show without talking about him,
yeah. And I would say HBO is a respectable organization who, for the most part, does the right thing by like the culture and the social zeitgeist. So,
Right.
I mean, at this point, clearly they haven't, not aired the show or anything. So it's just, I just think the conversation is so wrong about this. And what's interesting too? This is something I'm learning in school about like marketing and journalism. Dude, the way that these writers are writing about all this stuff, it could just be like a tactic for like Marvel, since this has been marketed as a superhero series to remain on top, to kill any competition, which by all means is really smart by them.
Theories now, or is
No,
this like
no,
an
it's
actual
not.
thing?
It's just like knowledge of journalism, right?
All right.
Like it's sort of like these big companies give the screeners out, so the journalists, if they want to keep getting the screeners and get those clicks first, because it's a click per view marketing system, you do not get dollar signs in today's age if you don't get those clicks. And the article that gets the first clicks gets the most clicks. So they want to not bash the movies too much when they get those screeners, and they don't want to say the wrong things because they won't get the screener the next time, and then slowly but surely they fall by the wayside. Just look at what happened with Collider.
Yep.
They started voicing their own opinions, and they stopped being a part of the monoculture of film criticism on YouTube, and where are they now? So this isn't conspiratorial at all. It's just business and money talking.
You're right. This is absolutely business and money talking. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me. And I'm really, really hoping this doesn't happen. I mean, obviously, we'll see what happens at the end of this first season, but I have a bad feeling they're already shaping this up for a cancellation after one season. It would not surprise me one bit. It would not, after everything that you just said about how, like, the industry, it would not surprise me one bit if that ends up happening, Especially given, because, so remember how before I named off all of those names, what's it called, that were involved? So these are the other names that are involved in the production behind the scenes, besides Joss Whedon. Philippa Goslett, who is taking over as the showrunner, besides Joss. Doug Petrie, who was one of the two showrunners involved with Daredevil Season 2 and The Defenders. Jane Espensen, who was a co-producer on Game of Thrones, who actually wrote one of my favorite episodes of Season 1. Ilene S. Landress, who was actually a producer, a longtime HBO producer, going all the way back to The Sopranos. And Bernadette Caulfield, who is an X-Files producer and also a Game of Thrones producer overall. So, needless to say, I think it's safe to say that this is a slate of producers who know what they're doing as far as content goes,
Totally. No, it's an experienced ensemble right there of producers, man, for sure. I don't know. I guess not to get too far away from like the initial topic. I'm not saying I'm 100% right. I'm just a guy on YouTube giving his criticism who happens to study marketing and journalism as well. And to me, it would make sense, but like I might not be right. And so obviously that's just another angle that I don't see people talking about, that I definitely analyze and sort of studying this type of stuff. Like, I've been in the industry though, on the music business side of things, and I've been told by labels like, hey, you might want to write this type of song because your competitor on the other label's writing this type of song. So it's just, it's, I just want people to think about the other side of things, because it's just insane to me how the biggest genre in the world right now for entertainment, superheroes, has really only been dominated by one company, with the second one having little moments here and there. It's very crazy to me.
It's very interesting because, again, for all the talk that people have of like, oh, which casting is more appropriate online, this is the real stuff that determines what type of properties they're going to get and what comic books they're going to get. And it depresses me that like not many people are like using the tool that they have at their resource in order to find this out. Why is it that every time we get something that should lead to more information, it leads to just spread of disinformation and less? So whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I just that's kind of all that I want to kind of talk about as far as that goes. But I definitely think that it will add something, but it definitely seems like the marketing is going to be something. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle for the show, to say the least, overall, since it already seems to have started off like with 1 foot like shot. So I don't know if that metaphor is an accurate comparison, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, too. I was going to ask the audience, I mean, what do you guys think? Will the Nevers add something new to the superhero genre? Do you think it has a chance, I guess, with how this topic has sort of shifted and changed throughout the course of the conversation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd be curious to hear what you guys think. Of course, subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, turn on that bell for notifications, and